Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our third town hall for faculty and staff. I want to thank all of you, including our students, for the planning and reopening materials that got us to this point. I want to thank all of you also for your understanding and flexibility as we've been sorting out the details for hundreds of different decisions and many implementation points. We know that there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty as we proceed, and that's stressful. So what we're trying to do is combat that with knowledge, with information, and continuing to share at every opportunity. Our goal today is to share what we know about our current decisions and implementation plans. Please know that whatever we share today, there's going to continue to be more follow-up. We'll continue to have FAQs. We will have more information shared in campus-wide messages. We're going to continue to involve many of you and so many of our leadership, governance groups, and others as we proceed, as we've been doing. There will be an awful lot of further discussion with direct supervisors and further communication from UBRs and preps as we proceed. I want to give a lot of credit to our campus leaders who have been so engaging, so involving, and so participative. We have been involving people as much as possible. In fact, this is our 8th town hall over the last 7 weeks. So just to give you a sense of everything we're trying to do, as well as perhaps an inundation of campus messaging. So moving ahead on the housekeeping front, just a quick preview of what we're going to be doing today. We're scheduled to go for 90 minutes, so we've expanded the time to give more time for questions. The primary focus is to look at your questions that you provided and those that you'll submit during the town hall today. I'll make some brief introductory comments. Then I'll ask Joan Prince, our Vice Chancellor for Global Inclusion and Engagement, to talk about some things that are happening regarding our diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as care, respect, and expression frameworks. Then we will have Robin Van Harpen, our Vice Chancellor for Finance and Administrative Affairs, talking about some of the updates on finance and budgetary matters. And then we'll move on to Provost Britz, who will provide an update on our planning for teaching and learning this fall. Then during the question and answer, we'll be joined by another dozen or more individuals. These are experts who have been working very, very closely on these planning details. That they'll be able to answer your concerns and questions as we proceed. I'll ask these individuals to introduce themselves in each of the different clusters that we'll go through. So we've received more than 50 questions so far specific to this town hall. We're going to address many of those as you hear these individuals speak, and then we will have time for Q&A. Every one of your questions will be answered either as an individual email or in the context of our FAQs that we've been putting together, and we continue to add to the hundreds of FAQs that are out there. The website for the FAQs can be found at UWM.edu/coronavirus/reopening. Once again, that's UWM.edu/coronavirus/reopening. So in the spirit of transparency, I also want you to know that Davey Shrasti, the education reporter for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, is listening to our conversation today. Now, for some quick updates. As we plan for resuming operations, I want you to know across all our campuses, we have been looking at your safety, health for employees and our students as we plan our reopening. That's a top priority. We know that in the COVID world, there is no guarantee of a 100% safe environment, but we've been planning with a deliberate focus on actions, behaviors, policies, and guidelines that can provide the greatest assurance as much as we can feasibly during this highly changeable pandemic. There are many safety precautions and actions that include more than 10 different areas. Requiring masks is one, especially and particularly inside buildings. Number 2 is maintaining social distance, 6 feet or more. Frequent hand washing, clearly identified paths in and out of classrooms, plexiglass in offices and classes where requested. In fact, if you follow Instagram, you can see a tremendous amount of plexiglass being placed in many campus locations. Residence and dining hall occupancy limits, supplies of PPE and sanitation materials, increased cleaning and sanitation, requiring training and attestation for employees and requiring training and pledges for students, daily symptom monitoring, with actions to take, such as self-isolation, communication with supervisor if ill, and other areas. So these are policies and guidelines, but I must stress, it's your behaviors and your communication to others that's going to really make a difference here. And I'm going to stress first at this point the importance of our working together in terms of understanding and communication, and I'll hit that theme a couple more times, and I think you'll hear that throughout the comments this morning. As you know, planning in this world is complex. There's so many variables, and it's also dynamic. Whatever we know today is probably going to change tomorrow and next week, and certainly a month from now when we're open. So we're getting pretty close. We've said this before, you know, as much as there's changes today, I'm going to ask you to continue to accommodate and roll with the uncertainty. We'll control what we can. We'll predict what we can. And I know a lot of us are finding that our tolerance for ambiguity is quite stressed right now. But that's what we really do have to go through. There are many different orders, and there's many things that we can't easily predict or control. So we have the state that has their rules around policies and guidelines. We've got different municipalities within which our campuses operate. So Waukesha and Washington County have very different COVID guidelines than does the city of Milwaukee. I think you know, but if you're not aware of, UW-Milwaukee is the first and so far the only institution of higher ed that has had its plan for reopening approved by the Milwaukee City Health Department. This is a real credit to the hard work that we put in and the conscientious care that we put in place for our employees and students and community. Other campuses are following our plan, but many of them are weeks, if not months, away from some of the types of procedures and implementation of practices that we've been really trying to study some of the absolute best practices as we go. There's been a lot of individuals involved with our scenario planning. We have over 100 people that have been working across 11 teams on many of the details that you're going to hear. I want to give, on the academic front, both Johannes Fritz and Scott Groner great credit for their leadership through a lot of this work. And I think that, you know, as a driving force, we're really trying to uphold our mission. The primary driver here is to resume our campus operations, to fulfill our mission, to provide access to education, to conduct research, and to engage meaningfully. The philosophy that underlies this is simple. We want our employees, you, to be able to provide essential services for our students, to conduct research, and engage in safe ways. We're following the CDC and other public health authorities' guidance. Now, what that means is that for some of you, that will mean continuing to work remotely. For some, that will mean working on campus with reasonable safety accommodations. It's going to vary by your role and by needs over time. And wherever possible, we are working to accommodate your individual preferences and circumstances. Let me stress again that our success is going to be directly related to your following and everybody engaging and supporting these healthy and safe standards and expectations. Now, with all that said, something that I want you to be aware of is that we do have very careful monitoring of a number of different dimensions, a number of different variables, a number of different trends, data lines, and developments that are underway, so that if we, as a university, need to pivot from the path that we're on in the fall semester, we will do so. We're working on the contingency planning process, and we'll have in the next 1 to 2 weeks a pretty thoroughly laid out plan with specific measures in place in terms of how we would make these types of pivots. So before I hand the floor over to our Vice Chancellor, Joan Prince, I want to acknowledge again the fear and the safety, the fear and the anxiety that goes along with COVID-19. There's tremendous uncertainty for us all. Many of you have expressed to me your hope, your anticipation of being able to come back and continue your research, continue to work with colleagues and to engage with our academic mission with students in the classroom. And at the same time, many of you have expressed legitimate concerns. You've raised questions and have understandable issues that you want to make sure we're aware of. If we have 3,750 employees We have 3,750 different situations with personal circumstances with our loved ones and others that are very much involved in our lives. So what we're trying to do is balance that hope and the concerns with all the safety, behaviors, guidelines that we can. We continue to ask for your understanding and patience as we go through this in our work together. So I'll stop here and ask for Vice Chancellor Joan Prince to share her insights about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the deep care and respect that we strive for across all of our campuses. Joan.
Thank you, Chancellor. Good morning, colleagues. I am going to attempt to speak probably at warp speed and provide an update for you regarding the DEI work that we have been and continue to be engaged in at our campus. So let me start with our work from summer of last year through spring of this year and provide a couple of examples of the work that was done during that time period. Number one, we advanced a faculty action team chaired by Dean Scott Gronert of LNS, Associate Dean Jennifer Deering of Nursing, and Associate Professor and Department Chair David Pate of the Helen Bader School of Social Welfare around the academic lens of diverse hiring pools and advancing equity and diversity in an academic setting. Based on their preliminary work and additional meetings with other small groups of faculty, a broader discussion was held with the academic leadership, led by our provost, and that included, of course, our deans. That discussion will move to the next step as we look at protocols to enhance diversity in academic hiring. So more to come on that as we move into the upcoming fall. Next, we worked with the University of Southern California's Center on Race and Equity, and we placed a 20-member UWM cohort through an 8-week module that focused on identifying, understanding, and confronting implicit bias, reducing bias in the search and hiring process, classroom incivility and productive conversations about race, etc., etc. This training is considered the benchmark for institutions of higher education. We had a very representative cohort that included governance, faculty, staff, our campus police, deans, and administrative participants. These individuals, along with others, will be utilized as part of our training and professional development offerings over the next academic year, so stay tuned for that. And of course, as you know, in partnership with Student Affairs, we formed a Care, Respect, and Expression team, representative of faculty, staff, and students. We did that last year. The team made formal recommendations to the Chancellor, which he accepted, and the Chancellor then charged Kelly Haig, our Chief Student Affairs Officer, and myself to move forward. And of course, we literally sat down to write the implementation plan when COVID hit and the campus closed. So keep that in mind as I now move to our current work this summer. The work continues this summer. So what are we working on and what have we accomplished? We really worked on holding the mirror up to ourselves and how we can begin that work internally. A campus dialogue series on racial inequities was held in partnership with the Division of Student Affairs. We supported 3 individual sessions for students, faculty, and staff. They're authentic and at times very difficult insight to hear, as well as many of the thoughts that were submitted in the chat discussion box by those that attended are being incorporated into our DEI work. They spoke, we listened, we heard. Next, a 17-member group from across campus that includes faculty, staff, and students have been working this summer on our mandatory anti-racist, anti-bias training requirement. Their recommendation will be made to the Chancellor and myself very shortly, and you will hear more on that from the Chancellor during his plenary and his call to action part 2 message. Very special thanks to Dr. Chia Vang, our professor of history and my AVC, Jamie Semple-Weimer of EDS, and Karen Mazzetti Moran of HR for co-leading this charge. Of course, you know that towards an anti-racist campus, Faculty and Staff Action Mini Grant Initiative is launched and ready to go. This is a partnership with the Office of Research. Thank you, Mark Harris. I invite you to look at the last call to action email from the Chancellor. It has the link for the Q&A session, which we will hold tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. So I hope you'll tune into that if you're interested in submitting an application. And this summer, we finalized the Care, Respect, and Expression implementation plan that I spoke of earlier. We're ready to move full steam ahead with it when we all return to campus. And finally, to whet your appetite for the work that awaits us in fall, please know that our major priorities will focus on review and enhancements of our search and screen processes that will include the training of chairs, enhanced hiring protocols with a focus on strategic and targeted recruiting, and a special announcement will be made by the Chancellor at the plenary around another major priority. So you'll have to tune in to hear about that. Those details are being finalized as we speak. So let me close with this. The work of DEI is continuous, it is strategic, and it will take each and every one of us for the work to be institutionalized and transformative. Dean Ron Perez is on board in preparing an inclusive visual so that all forms of diversity, honoring all of its definitions, will be cataloged, documented, nurtured, part of a plan of action, and celebrated as a part of the work. Work must be done on every aspect of DEI. We need your help and your commitment to move this needle. DEI defines who we are, who we attract as faculty and staff, and the effects on the environment that they work in. And it prepares our students that we serve for the diverse world that they will matriculate into. Thank you so much for listening, and Chancellor, I'll turn it back over to you.
Very nice, Joan. Those are important messages, great details, and I want to just offer a few quick comments before I hand it over to Vice Chancellor Van Harpen. As Joan said, certainly look forward to more information in the plenary. There has been much that has been done, there's much being planned, and there's much to do. This area around diversity, equity, and inclusion is going to be augmented by what I consider to be another D word, our DNA. It's our DNA as an access institution. We must own and live up to what a access and research institution really means. And so we're going to be undertaking and implementing many additional actions in those areas to change our culture and climate now and in the future. So with that said, I'm going to now ask Vice Chancellor Robin Van Harpen to present our financial and budget update with many details that she will provide an overview of. Robin, please.
Thank you, Chancellor Mone. So as I talk about how COVID-19 has impacted our budget and finances, it's important to start with a bit of context of where we were before COVID-19 was upon us. And we had our challenges. As many of you know, we have been facing about 9 consecutive years of enrollment declines since our peak in the fall of 2010, with the fall of 2019 being a bit more of a decline than our average. We're also now in our 8th year of a tuition freeze. And so while our expenses have been subject to inflation and have risen throughout this period of time, our largest source of revenue, tuition, has been declining for the last 8 years. On a positive note, though, through very careful budget management, and more specifically a slowdown in our expenses, we have been able to shore up our carry forward balances over the last several years, and that has been and will be very helpful to us weathering this storm. Now that we have COVID-19 upon us, we're learning what those effects will be. In the 2020 fiscal year that just ended on June 30th, we don't have final numbers yet. We'll have those in August, but we are anticipating that we will see a net operating deficit of about $15 to $18 million. And that net operating deficit will reduce our carry forward balances by that same amount. Going into the next fiscal year, FY21, COVID-19 is going to continue to have major impacts on our auxiliary operations, namely housing, dining, transportation services are the big ones that rely on user fees or charges. Housing right now is anticipating for budget purposes to be at about 60% capacity in the fall. And where housing goes, there also goes dining and transportation services. Those operations are going to have to mitigate those losses as much as possible through cost savings. On the academic and non-auxiliary administrative side of the house, our two largest sources of revenue are tuition and state appropriations, along with some other miscellaneous sources. On the tuition front, for next year, right now, we're anticipating an overall decline in enrollment somewhere between 5 and 10%. And we really won't know for sure what that will be until the end of the year, but we'll have a much better indication by about mid-September as to how this crisis is going to impact our final enrollment for the fall. In terms of state appropriations, we've been told that for some time that we needed to plan for a cut of between 5 and 15%. More recently, last week, there was an announcement of a $250 million state budget cut, and our portion of that equates to about 7.5% of a cut. So some people have asked in submitting questions for this town hall whether this is yet another thing that is coming to impact us. And in fact, the cut that was announced was well within the planning that we have been doing for some time. So yes, it is an additional cut, but it's within the planning that we've been doing. With those major losses of revenue and other miscellaneous losses, as well as increased expenses related to PPE and other COVID needs, in total, we're anticipating that the impact of COVID-19 on our overall budget would be a net deficit of somewhere between $25 and $54 million, not including the auxiliary operations, if we didn't take any measures to cut costs. So through much discussion and planning with advice from our financial impact team, the Chancellor and Provost and I have been in discussion over a period of months on what we need to do in FY21 to be prudent. We have decided through that discussion that we need to reduce our expenses further this fiscal year by $25 million, below what we had already been planning for fiscal year 21 pre-COVID. That's a really big number, the biggest we've ever had to deal with in a single year in our history. Every school, college, and division has now been assigned a portion of the $25 million. We are all working now on plans for how to accomplish that expense reduction. A number of the actions that were taken centrally over the past several months will help contribute to that expense savings, and that would include the intermittent furloughs, the summer position-specific furloughs, and a hiring, compensation, and travel freezes. But those actions are not enough. Every division is also going to have to look for further savings from supplies and expenses, vacancies, possibly additional furloughs, and in some cases layoffs. In the past, we've been able to keep layoffs to a minimum and instead shrink the workforce through attrition and strategic rehiring. I know that divisional leaders are going to continue to strive to use all the other mechanisms first, but in some cases, given the magnitude of this cut, layoffs will be necessary to achieve the expense reductions that we have to undertake. We received a question prior to the town hall about whether there's been thought given to how to lighten the load imposed by the large number of highly paid administrators at UWM. Now, that term, large number of highly paid administrators, might be a bit of a subjective term. In the past, when we've examined the data, our percentage at UWM for true central administrative expenses, as opposed to academic or student support, has been extremely low as a percentage of our operations relative to peers. When we started declining and saw some major enrollment and state budget cuts back in 2012, our old budget model that we've had for a long period of time attributed 80% of those declines to schools and colleges, but we changed that beginning around 2015 so that all of administration and the support units share at least equally in the declines in revenue. Each unit that provides administrative services has worked to minimize the impact to students in the campus community while dealing with the same decline in resources that schools and colleges have faced as well. Also, as to individuals and compensation, the main mechanism that we have available to us to temporarily address compensation is through intermittent furloughs. And we did that by applying furloughs in a progressive manner, with much more heavily weighted on the highest income earners at UWM, with the lowest income earners not being subject to intermittent furloughs. A number of the Chancellor's direct reports opted to exchange their increased furlough days for a pay cut instead, and also the Chancellor and Provost also each voluntarily reduced their pay beyond that. You might be thinking, don't we just need to get through this year and then we'll get back to normal? The answer to that is mixed. We are very hopeful that this year is going to be the peak year in terms of revenue and enrollment losses. But our world has shifted even faster than it had been shifted for some time before this year. And we are not expecting our revenues to return to normal in the next fiscal year 22. We are going to be monitoring this at every step and throughout the year, but at this time we're going to have to plan for the financial impact to continue for some time. And our fiscal year 22 budget planning is right around the corner and starts in the fall. We will make it through this. UWM remains vital to Wisconsin and to the region, and the larger context will improve. There will be some breaks that will come our way, as has happened in the past, and we will figure this out. But we'll be best poised to do that if we take the hard actions we need to now, and not wait until our choices in the future are more limited. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Chancellor Mone for the next set of speakers.
Thank you, Robin. You've covered an awful lot of information in a short period. What I appreciate about your comments and content, it is not just the important factual updates with respect to where our budgetary matters are, but also the forecasting and really the budget philosophy, where we're sharing the pain together, but we have every reason to believe that we're basically controlling things in a very reasonable and prudent manner, given the tough headwinds that we're facing. And as you all know, headwinds are kind of the name of the game today in higher education, but we're full of grit and fortitude, and we're gonna continue to forge ahead. So with that background, those are the overview comments from myself, Joan, and Robin. And now I'm going to shift into something where we go into more substantive depth, where we have Provost Britz, who's going to provide some overview comments on the academic side of the house, and then we will continue with a number of different speakers addressing your questions. Provost Britz, please.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Mone, Mark. Listening also to your opening comments, I also just want to, and I didn't put that in any comments, but just want to thank you also for your leadership. It's a time, I don't know if I should say just stable and visionary, but boy, we are challenged like we have never been before. And I can see every morning in the week, literally when we meet to discuss. So I just thought also making use of the opportunity to thank you for your leadership during this very, very challenging times. I have just a few brief introductory comments, and then I'm going to ask Scott and Dev and Kay and Dave and Kathy Dolan to talk a little bit more about the details. My first brief comments relates to continuous planning. We continue to plan for the spring, which I think will probably be the same as the fall, mainly online hybrid approach. We really look at the winter as mainly like in the summer online approach for winter, with a few exceptions where needed. Also, we look at the what I just call the what if scenario. If we have to revert back to fully online in the fall, how and when are we going to make that decision? We are working on that. And then, as Robin said, Robin, thank you for those comments about believing in the future. I know this is the worst, the biggest crisis we have ever gone through at UWM, but I firmly believe in the future. And that's why in our planning, I'm not just looking at the crisis as we have it now. And I thought, shall I say, do we look at the future post-COVID? And I thought, well, COVID might be for us for a very long time. Maybe we should rather talk about a post-pandemic future and see how the campus will look like. There will be a future, I'm positive about it, but it will be different. And it will come at a cost, and it is painful. And I realize that every day, but there is a future. And we built a future also on the 2030 document that I would encourage you, if you can read it, it's on the web available, where we talk about how the campus would look like. And we are now working towards the implementation committees on campus with our shared governance groups. And as Robin earlier mentioned, we will be different. I don't foresee that we will continue with 13 schools and 13 colleges with 13 deans or the GR courses. We will have a different future, but we can shape it if we are strategically engaged in planning post-pandemic. My second comment, Mark, relates just to a thank you. I want to thank you all for your understanding, for your support, for your input, for the way you help one another, but more so for the way that you are willing to walk the extra mile for our students. I know that, I hear that, people talk. I really just want to tell you, I really appreciate that. And Mark, my last comment is just, you know, we sometimes do talk about special people who make a difference. And I thought this morning, I just want to say Kristen Hildebrand in the registrar's office and her team. Kristen, I hope you're here this morning. I just hear so many good things for all the wonderful work that you do behind the scenes to make sure our classes and our courses are rolled out. So just want to say shout out for you and your team. Thank you. And now, Mark, I'm going to give it over to Scott to talk about a little bit of the academic planning, and he will give it over to the other members of my team. Thank you. Scott, over to you.
Well, thanks, Johannes. And we had a lot of questions about instructional planning. I'm going to try to cover those. So the scenario planning work group met throughout the month of May, had a really broad representation. Faculty, students, administrators, staff were on that group. And as we looked at the challenges, social distancing changed the campus completely. We lost 75% of our classroom space. We couldn't have classes with more than 50 individuals. That led to a recommendation of a mostly online fall semester. It also led to a recommendation of shortening our courses by 15 minutes across the board. That's to create more time for safe ingress, egress from the classrooms and more time for cleaning between classes. As a part of this, we also looked at prioritizing what would be face-to-face. And Diane Reddy led a team doing this. And the things we looked at were courses that need to be face-to-face for accreditation, courses that had a lot of experiential learning like labs and studios, and courses that were highly interactive. We collected those courses from our units, and at the end we had about 35% of our classes would be face-to-face in some way. Many of them are hybrid, 65% online. For context, generally we have about 80% of our courses face-to-face or hybrid. The schedule of classes is now done. As Johannes said, the registrar's office did an outstanding job. If you look online now, you'll see the courses that will be online, the courses that are going to be face-to-face hybrid, and which classrooms they've been assigned to. All throughout the process, we knew there'd have to be accommodations for students who couldn't be on campus face-to-face, whether that happened during the semester or they just weren't moving to Milwaukee. Before the semester, we've asked advisors to help those students by finding other sections that are online, by choosing alternative courses that are online. But for students who either need the changed online during the semester or we couldn't find another solution, we asked instructors to provide a remote access alternative. All the general assignment classrooms for the fall will have lecture capture capabilities. And we asked instructors not to always create a fully online alternative, but to create some accommodation that will allow our students to attend remotely. That won't be always possible though in studios and labs, but in those cases we ask the instructors during mid-semester to be as sensitive and accommodating as they can be to students, because students will have challenges related to COVID during the semester. We're not done with planning, as the Provost mentioned, looking to the spring and scenario planning for that. The winterim, as the Provost mentioned, will be almost exclusively online, and we are looking at challenges that may occur during the fall, both pivot back to online or more complex challenges. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dave Clark, who's going to talk a little bit about our guidance to instructors.
Thanks, Scott. I'm going to be a little quick here. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of details that we need to iron out. There's some of these details are also covered in the Provost email that went out last week, so I suggest that you check that out as well. Critical thing that you can do now to help us with fall enrollments is to reach out to your fall students, get them excited about your course. Reach out to your majors and minors. A note from a favorite instructor can make a huge difference in getting a student interested in coming back and re-engaging with UWM. And a lot of them are facing a lot of difficult choices right now. This is something that we're hearing a lot from students. And so, you know, feeling like they have a place and a home here can make a big difference, and instructors can have a really valuable part of that. A few key details. Plan on working virtually for your office hours and for other appointments. Basically, all student services are going to be provided online. Be sure to post on campus and elsewhere, perhaps your email signature, how students can make appointments. We will be providing some standard syllabus language that will include guidance for students on health and behavioral guidelines, not coming to class if they're sick, how to, wearing masks, a legal statement on recordings, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll be providing that information for you to put in your syllabi. And to echo a bit of what Scott was saying, it's going to be critical that we use Canvas, especially the Canvas Gradebook, for all courses. This is something that students are taught to expect in their high schools. This is what they get, and it's also critical for the ongoing work of our retention team, which relies on Canvas for aggregate data that can help us identify students who are facing challenges. And of course, plan ahead for how you can best accommodate students who can no longer attend your course. Think about how your course design might adapt to support students who need to step out, or if we need to move fully online. So start to think about that. Just a couple of side notes. We ask that instructors not allow auditors this fall into their face-to-face courses. This is ultimately an instructor choice. We need to preserve space for our 4-credit students. Auditors are, of course, welcome in the online courses if the instructor is willing to include them. And a final note, course evaluations will be exclusively online this fall and likely going forward. We're going to be developing a Qualtrics-based solution so that we'll be providing to instructors and departments. And thank you. And now I'll be passing it over to Kay Eilers for some additional remarks.
Good morning, everyone. So with all of the changes coming for enrollment, we've of course, rather for fall, we've of course been tracking our enrollments for fall 2020 very closely. We know this directs, of course, the experience on campus, as well as our overall budget. A special thanks to Jonathan Haynes and the IR team. Because of their work, we've been able to monitor weekly the enrollments of all of our student populations. So looking at associate through graduate level, our new students, and our continuing. With the extensive efforts of so many on campus, we are still slightly behind where we were in fall 2019. So as of this Monday, enrollment across all campuses, all levels, is lower by about 5%. So obviously monitoring that rate really closely. We're working hard to recruit and retain every student to be here with us, whether that's in person or virtually, come September 2nd. There are a few bright spots to share here with enrollment. Overall graduate student enrollment is up 2%, and our continuing undergraduate student enrollment is up 2% as of this week. These bright spots really wouldn't be possible. So here comes my shout out. The individuals who have been digging into this work in the schools and colleges, our advisors, our admissions representatives, our student service and multicultural student centers have been doing a ton of work to conduct extensive outreach and fielding numerous inquiries to support students to get them enrolled for fall. And this work really must continue to push forward because really at this time we need full engagement to make sure our students are able to be successful as they enroll in the fall. With that, I'll turn it over to Dev for a few more details.
Good morning. I wanted to give an update on 3 different items. First of all, as you all know, that the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning, or CETL, has been providing throughout the summer high quality online and blended course workshops that can support you. CETL also supports instructors in preparing their coursework through individual consultations and live webinars and workshops that can be done in a self-paced manner. A new initiative through CETL is the online and blended teaching program Communities of Practice. This is supported by a grant from the UW system, and the grant can provide up to 260 instructors a small honorarium of about $400 to participate and also act as a coach within these communities of practice. In order to be a participant, you have to be teaching at least one course in a hybrid or online mode in the fall semester, and you must have completed the online or hybrid teaching workshops by August 31st. And in order to be a coach, you have to have received the UWM certificate in online and blended teaching program. You can contact Diane Reddy, the director of CETL, for any questions related to this. We'll also put a link on the Provost Monday update to the specific page with information on this. As always, you can contact CETL as you're working on your course materials. If you have a question, you can quickly send an email to CETL, C-E-T-L, at uwm.edu at any time. This email is monitored by CETL's staff 24/7, so don't be surprised if you get an answer at 2 o'clock. If you send an email at 1 o'clock in the morning, you might get within an hour. You might get a response as you're working on your course materials. You can also contact them by phone during the business hours, Monday through Friday. I want to also give an update on the Accessibility Resource Center. Accessibility Resource Center, or ARC, provides, as you know, accommodations for students with disabilities. And one of the things that we are going to be implementing this fall is an instructor portal called Prof Connect. You'll get a link to that in an email that'll come in about a couple of weeks. Faculty and instructional staff can log into this portal, and they can actually see all the students who are in their classes that need accommodations and what kind of accommodations, etc., all the details. They can also contact the students or the ARC staff through this portal. And so this kind of avoids having to meet face-to-face with anybody or through working through email. So you will have all of that information as you need right in front of you. ARC will continue the normal services that it provides, such as interpreting in face-to-face classes, note-taking support for students, alternative exams, and alternative format text and captioning for videos. For the face-to-face classes, if interpreters are required for a student in your class, ARC will send the interpreter to the classroom. The interpreters will have a mask that will have a clear window around their mouth so the students can actually see their lip movements as well, which enhances the ability to communicate with students. One last thing is about the international students. As you know, the ICE had issued a guideline in July that kind of reversed the guideline that was issued in March. Which was very alarming to everybody, and then there were lawsuits that were filed to block that. And ICE later on rescinded its guideline, which required international students to take no more than 3 credits online. And if an institution were to convert to online or only offer courses online, the students will have to leave the country. So they kind of rescinded that, and they've gone back to the guideline that was issued in March, which allows continuing students to enroll in as many online courses as possible as part of their full program of study. However, the clarification was also provided earlier this week that said new international students who were not here before March 9th will not be able to come to the US or will have to leave the US if they have to take courses fully online. So the accommodation of students taking as many online courses as possible is only provided to continuing students, which is at least a relief for our students now. So if you have a new graduate student coming to your program, before they issue the visa or at the border, they are actually asking to check their registration list, which shows which courses will be online, which courses will have face-to-face components. So it is important to advise your students that are planning to come here in the fall to have registered for the courses before they come, and the registration record includes something with the face-to-face component. For more information, you can contact CIE, or you can send me an email, which I will answer to all your specific questions related to that. I will now pass it along to Kathy Dolan.
Thanks, Deb. Good morning, everyone. I'm here this morning as the chair of the University Committee, and I just wanted to remind faculty that to acknowledge all of the disruption to professional and personal lives that COVID-19 has caused, the university has adopted the new policy that allows for untenured faculty to request an extension of their tenure clock based on COVID-19 circumstances, and that the deadline for applying for that accommodation, if you choose, is the end of this calendar year. So people should think about their circumstances, think about how the spring and fall went, and speak with their department chairs, their executive committees for some guidance on whether they would like to apply for that accommodation, but that you also do have through the end of this calendar year. Thank you. And I will turn things back now to the Provost.
Thank you very much, Kathy, and thanks for my team. And Mark, over to you for the sake of time.
Thanks, Johannes, and thanks all on your team for carrying and sharing all those important details. That's exactly the type of information that we've been asked about during the questions that we received beforehand. I'm now going to shift this over to our Chief Student Affairs Officer, Kelly Haig. Kelly and her team are going to be talking about campus practices for community health. There's a number of very important details that affect both our faculty, staff, and student population. So Kelly, with your team, please take it away.
Thank you. I think what's been clear, I hope what's been clear so far this morning, is how closely coordinated our efforts have been to really respond to an unprecedented crisis and the way that it is impacting all of us. I think the focus of our section right now is to really highlight our campus commitment to health and safety. And campus is all of us. So I think you're going to hear, I know you will hear from some of the folks who are most closely connected to a lot of our planning details that support health and safety. But as you think about what our next presenters will share, I'd like for you to think about, how can I show up in this way? How can I make sure that I am an active leader and community member in terms of supporting health of all of us? So I think you've seen through multiple campus communications that the Emergency Operations Center has put together a framework for how health and safety can be supported as we move kind of from more of an off-campus to a little bit more of an in-person experience. The Chancellor in his early remarks did highlight what the website is, and a lot of our details would be able to be found there. Included in the report by the Emergency Operations Center is our Panther Community Health and Safety Standards. These will serve as our guiding principles for policies that are in development for both our students, faculty, and staff. My colleagues who are joining me next will share in great detail what will be expected of us all as we work to support a culture of health and safety at UWM. Now I'd like to turn it over to James Fay, who's going to talk a little bit about masks and social distancing. James?
Thank you, Kelly. Hello, everyone. We have received multiple questions about cloth face coverings and masks, so I'm going to take the opportunity to provide some general information as well as address some of the specific concerns that were raised in the questions we received. Cloth face coverings and masks serve as a simple barrier to help prevent respiratory droplets from traveling into the air and onto other people when the person wearing it coughs, sneezes, talks, or raises their voice. This is called source control. To be an effective form of source control, cloth face coverings and masks should not have exhalation valves, which allow the wearer's breath to escape the mask without being filtered through the mask material. Recent studies demonstrate that the use of cloth face coverings or masks reduce the spray of droplets when worn over the nose and mouth. COVID-19 spreads mainly among people who are in close contact with one another within about 6 feet, so the use of face coverings is particularly important where social distancing is difficult to maintain. Everyone on all UWM campuses is required to wear a face covering and maintain social distancing whenever possible. UWM's policy requiring face coverings and social distancing can be found in the UWM Emergency Operations Center COVID-19 Operations Planning Report. Face coverings are always required when indoors, except when in one's own residence hall room or alone in a private office or other non-shared space. It is important to note that cubicle areas are not considered private offices, so face coverings are still required in those areas. Face coverings are also required outdoors in situations when 6 feet of social distancing cannot be maintained. Public health authorities have determined that consistent usage of face coverings can greatly limit the spread of COVID-19. UWM is not the only institution requiring face coverings. Similar rules apply at all UW system facilities. The City of Milwaukee and other local municipalities have begun requiring the use of face coverings, as have several states and retail store chains nationwide. There are a few exceptions to the face covering rule, including when an individual's own health condition prevents the wearing of the face covering and the individual has received an approved exception from Human Resources for employees or the Accessibility Resource Center for students, where the individual's work or school responsibilities prevent wearing of a face covering, when working in a personal office or other non-shared space or in one's own residence hall room, environments where hazards exist that create a greater risk by wearing a face covering, such as engineering bays or biology research and instructional labs, when performing physical exertions such as manual labor, running, and athletics training, and when in an indoor area designated for eating food and social distancing has been maintained. In all cases where a face covering cannot be worn and social distancing cannot be maintained, alternative methods must be used to limit potential transmission of COVID-19. UWM branded cloth face coverings will be provided to students, faculty, and staff at the beginning of the fall semester. Details on distribution will be shared when they are available. In addition, UWM will provide 2 unbranded cloth face coverings to employees working on campus. While face coverings are not considered personal protective equipment, they are available through the EOC PPE request form at uwm.edu/PPE. The link to the EOC PPE request form can also be found on the fall 2020 reopening website. Students should bring their own face covering to wear on campus. A student who cannot afford or obtain a face covering can contact the Dean of Students office for assistance. Although the expectation is that students, faculty, staff, and visitors will wear a face covering on campus that they own or has been issued to them, in certain situations, when someone is without one, service and information desks, as well as department offices throughout the Milwaukee and branch campuses will have a supply of disposable masks available. With regard to alternatives to cloth face coverings and masks, because it is not known if face shields provide any benefit as source control to protect others from the wearer's respiratory particles, CDC does not recommend the use of a face shield as a substitute for a cloth face covering or mask, and the City of Milwaukee Health Department also advised they were not appropriate alternatives. A face shield may only be used in combination with a face covering or mask. Due to concerns related to communication, however, the Emergency Operations Center PPE and supplies team is evaluating an enhanced face shield with features that make it perform similarly to a cloth face covering, which could serve as an appropriate alternative to cloth face coverings. These enhanced face shields may be provided to faculty that perform face-to-face instruction and for others where lip reading and facial expressions are especially important. Additionally, the Emergency Operations Center PPE and supplies team has procured a limited amount of cloth face coverings that have a clear section over the mouth to make it easier for lip reading. These are available by special request. They look just like this. One of the most important takeaways is that you should understand and always remember that wearing a cloth face covering or mask is an act of altruism and compassion to protect our fellow Panthers and the surrounding community. With that, I'll turn it over to Adam Jussel.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'm going to talk a little bit about student training and pledge first, and then also enforcement and resources available for students with following health and safety guidelines. So the first thing I'll jump into is training and pledge for students. We are working actively with campus partners on a training and a pledge. this is consistent with what schools are doing nationwide. Now, there are some questions about enforcement and the methodologies in which we will do that, but it really takes that community health oriented approach, which is focusing on, as James mentioned, altruism, Panther health and safety, rather than focusing on punishment, which is, we do see some other institutions doing that, and our research has shown that this is a much more effective model. So we are working on that. We're working to create a training and pledge for students. And we've heard that from students, is they want to know the rules, they want to know how to be safe and healthy, and we believe them. But there are going to be instances where students specifically choose to violate our health and safety standards. Now, as mentioned earlier, Carol mentioned, we're taking an education first approach. So we ask the community, faculty, staff, other students to educate each other about the standards. So that may be something as simple as reminding someone that's not wearing a mask on campus that, hey, did you know that there's a mask requirement? And here's where you can go get some masks. We are working on mask handout stations so that people that don't have one, or if students forget one when they come on campus, they have easy access to one. So those are things that are in the works, and we're working the best we can to make sure that students have the resources that they need to succeed. Now, there are questions that have come up about in a classroom setting, what happens if a student refuses? Student comes into the classrooms not wearing a mask. Again, we ask that you educate them, provide them with information about where they can get those masks. And then if they refuse, you can ask them to take a break and exit the classroom to get a mask, or until they can be comporting with the standards, they should leave the class, as they may be a disruption. One of the questions was if they have a coughing fit in the middle of class. Well, one of the suggestions might be asking them to take a break and leave, and we believe that most of our students will comply with those guidance. So this is the plan, and this is our recommendation, but just know that there will be other hypotheticals that come up over time, and our office remains available to workshop those with you. So just give us a call or email us, and we can help in any way we can. There was a question, I think James hit on this, about the confirmation of the mask policy. Do people need to wear masks if there's a plexiglass partition? And the answer is yes. So we're really hopeful and optimistic about our students and how they'll treat each other and treat us and the campus community. But again, if those situations do arise where you have questions about compliance, please don't hesitate to call us. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tim Danielson.
Thanks, Adam. Hi, everybody. I'm going to talk for a moment about employee training and attestation. Adam just talked about the importance of COVID education for students. It's important for employees to have that same educational foundation. And then a little bit about the enforcement of face coverings for employees. So we are going to have a mandatory training, electronic, and an attestation for the completion of that training for employees. The training is short, but it hits on the most important details that we need to know and understand, and the most recent components of the CDC guidelines around things like self-symptom monitoring and how the virus is transmitted between people. So it's very important that we complete this training. It'll be strictly enforced, especially for individuals who will be working on campus. Now, for individuals who don't have access to a computer, when they come to campus, we'll ask them to complete that training in hard copy at the start of their first day back on campus, and complete the attestation as well. And that will be on paid time for those individuals who are among the university staff population. Very important to understand that. This isn't available just yet, but will be rolled out soon. Now, on the enforcement of face coverings. So UWM is a community of people that we care for and about ourselves and each other. That's part of the foundation that makes us great. I know that we're going to do all of the things that we need to do to help ensure the health and safety of ourselves and all of those who are around us. When we forget, we go to get something off the copy machine, we run to retrieve a tool, we just run to the restroom and we forget to put face covering on. Gentle reminders to one another is okay and appreciated. But it's also important that those of us then who are in receipt of those gentle reminders receive those in the right spirit. If we have individuals that start to become more neglectful with adhering to any of the safety protocols, including the wearing of face coverings, we'll handle those on a case-by-case basis. Again, I really don't expect that we'll have very many of those at UWM because of who we are. If for some reason you're not able to wear face covering because of a health condition, I would ask you to please reach out to the HR business partner or prep who works with your school, college, or division, and they'll guide you through a process that will help you. If it's a problem for you to wear a face covering, but it's not health related, then I would ask you to reach out to the Office of University Safety and Assurances, and they will help you. And one last point, just to directly address a question that was asked. Facilities employees will be wearing masks as they move around the institution and complete the work that they do. This includes if there's a need for a university facilities employee to enter a residence hall room to complete work, they will be wearing a face covering when that occurs. Okay, Julie, I'm going to turn it over now to you as the campus health officer.
Thanks, Tim. So as you can see, and as you've heard over the course of this conversation, there has been a strong commitment related to health and well-being that has been embedded in all of the planning that we've done. I think as we've looked at information of some college campuses that are changing their plan to being fully in face-to-face, we from the beginning had our compass pointed in the right direction and did a critical analysis, and we're prepared to be where we are right now, which is looking at a campus that is really focusing on maintaining healthy environments, healthy operations, is focusing on preventive behavior, and is also focusing on strategies related to making sure that individuals know that they need to stay home when they're ill. In talking through just a few things about what we've gotten questions about, and there was a lot of focus and questions about masks, which I think is really appropriate because masks are one of those key areas that we know are effective in reducing COVID-19 transmission. In terms of symptom monitoring, our symptom monitoring web-based tool should be available early next week, and that is a tool that will go live for employees and students, as well as visitors and contractors. And this walks people through and reminds people what they should be checking each day as they're required to do that before they come on site. In addition, it's going to be a good go-to location where as you go through that, you will see screens about steps that you should be taking. Should one of those different scenarios reflect a positive, either in terms of your symptoms, or we're also asking individuals if they've been in close contact with somebody with COVID-19. So that will help walk you through to the next steps in terms of what to take on campus and who to inform. There are a couple of categories related to testing as well as contact tracing, and I want to talk a little bit about that. In terms of testing, I want to give a shout out to staff that is currently on campus, and while that's currently in lots of different departments, and that's facilities that I have seen in the Northwest Quadrant, again, cleaning and doing their job, and the team at Norris Health Center who has been active in taking care of our students all through the pandemic to date. So in terms of testing for students, we're very fortunate to have the Health Center and testing and a partnership with the City of Milwaukee Health Department. As we've been hearing a lot about challenges related to testing turnaround time, through our partnership, through our point of care testing, and through our testing with the City of Milwaukee Health Department, we were able to, within 24 to 48 hours, advise a student who's seeking care and testing at the health center. For employees, in terms of testing and testing sites, using your primary care network, community testing sites, and pharmacies, CVS Pharmacy in particular has been expanding their testing and testing access. Since testing is going to be a key component in terms of if somebody has symptoms. In terms of contact tracing, that is going to be done in a partnership with the City of Milwaukee Health Department. And it's just a reminder, the health departments across the region have been working together as well. And that health departments, Wauwatosa, and all the folks in this region have been working together and communicating, because the local jurisdiction will be the primary jurisdiction related to contact tracing. So we are connecting with them on a regular basis so that we will be doing some of the first steps in contact tracing. And you can see details on that related to the on-site employee guidance as well. In terms of students, one of the things that we have been doing in orientations and our communications in terms of social media is really reaching out to them in terms of preventive strategies. And when we have surveyed them, and up to 600 students answered a recent survey related to wearing masks, understanding the fundamentals, 70+% of individuals are already regularly wearing masks in their communities. And so the recent mask mandates, particularly in our region, are really helping, I think, change the social norms and the culture. So when our students arrive on campus, they already will have healthy habits, and we will help them continue with their healthy habits and support them. I'm going to let Melissa speak a little bit more related to steps related to employees and on-site guidance. Melissa?
Thanks, Julie. So very briefly, I will cover what we do as an employee if we happen to have symptoms. All the things I'm going to talk about right now are outlined in the on-site employee work practices document. But if you happen to have symptoms, you've been a close contact to someone who's tested positive for COVID-19, or if you tested positive, we don't want you to be coming to campus. So you would then report to your supervisor that you're in this situation, and that we would also want to know, where have you been in the previous 48 hours on campus? Have you had close contacts? And where have you been on site for more than 15 minutes, so that we can make sure that we clean, if we haven't already cleaned that space, so that we make sure it's clean for the next people coming into the space. In addition to notifying your supervisor if you're in these categories, we also have there will be a process for returning to the workplace. Each of those situations has a little bit different process. So you'll call your supervisor, and your supervisor will work through the situation and when it would be safe for you to come back to campus. Now, supervisors or preps or HR business partners will be able to also answer your questions. If you don't know the answers, there's a team at University Safety and Assurances that is happy to help walk you through the process, because it can be a little bit overwhelming. We've never had to deal with this before, and so now we want to make sure that we're keeping our campus safe by not having people that are symptomatic or testing positive on campus at the time where they might be able to transmit COVID-19. So I will now pass it back to Julie. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. So as we look at our strategies related to community mitigation, which includes, again, healthy environments, preventive strategies, healthy operations, I will send it back to Mark before we talk a little bit more in detail about our facilities.
Julie, team, thank you all for your work in this area. This is where we have so many of the questions around the specific details that are important. And we're grateful for so many of you in what I call boundary spanning roles, working closely with CDC, public health authorities, state officials, and others to really make sure that we're tracking, incorporating many of the best practices. A lot of important details around employees, communication, answering a lot of the what ifs that we've answered or been asked about. While we received a little over 50 questions, I think we've answered most everything, but we have one more section to go. And that's around our facilities and transportation and return to the specific campus facilities. Melissa, I think you're going to lead this and moderate with your team. Please, over to you.
Thank you, Chancellor Mone. So this morning I will be joined by Tim Danielson, the Associate Vice Chancellor for Human Resources, and Zach Stuerwald, the Associate Director in University Safety and Assurances. And we're going to be covering a few topics related to cleaning, parking and transportation, and how do we actually go about returning to our offices? What are the new procedures for ensuring safety in our spaces? And are there approval processes, and how do we go about that? So Zach and Tim will be covering those topics. I'm going to start us off with an update on our cleaning procedures. Everyone is very interested in making sure our spaces are clean and safe to be working in and learning in. So the classrooms will be a priority for our environmental services staff. They will be cleaning those classrooms 1 to 2 times a day. And in addition, they'll be focusing on our bathrooms, our restrooms, and our common touch points. So places like doorknobs, railings on staircases, and our elevators. The buttons in the elevators, making sure those spaces are cleaned. We did receive a question specifically about elevators and how will we keep those clean, and we'll do our best to make sure we're cleaning them regularly during the day, but we're also going to be relying on people on site to make sure we're following the socially distancing in the elevators. So don't overpopulate the elevator space. Don't be talking in the elevators, make sure we're wearing our face coverings. And if you're physically able to use the stairs, that might help alleviate some of the pressure on our elevators. So in addition to environmental services focusing on those spaces, we will also be providing hand sanitizer in entryways, in all of our classrooms. Hand sanitizer can be available in office spaces by request through the PPE team. To support environmental services, we are really going to be relying on the campus community. Environmental services can't be cleaning everything 24 hours a day, so we'll be relying on students, faculty, employees to be cleaning any shared spaces. So when you come to a classroom, we will have cleaning products available that a student can clean their desk before they use it. If you have a shared copier in your office, wipe it down before you use it, wipe it down after you use it. Feel free to wipe down doorknobs and door handles. In addition, if there's a space like a bathroom and there's a handle on it, feel free to use a paper towel to grab that door handle so you don't have to touch it. And in addition, hand washing and use of hand sanitizer on a regular basis throughout the day will really help to reduce the transmission of COVID-19. And those are all things that you can do for yourself and for the campus community. So just as a reminder that our facility services staff has been on site during the last few months. So they have been maintaining our buildings, they've been addressing HVAC concerns, they've been handling the plumbing, making sure water is running through the systems. So nothing has been shut down. Our buildings have not been closed in that capacity. So they are going to be continuing to do those things and maintaining the facilities as they have in the past. And supervisors, as you come back to your office space, if you notice anything that doesn't seem right and you have questions about the facility itself, from like an HVAC question or maybe a cleaning question related to environmental services, please reach out to your building chair, or you're also able to submit a service request to facility services. Transportation is another topic that we receive a lot of questions on. As an auxiliary unit, parking and transportation is reliant on fees in order to operate and to maintain our parking lots and to maintain our parking garages. So on July 13th, we did reinstate parking fees. Due to the uncertainty of the fall semester, and we may have to change things quickly. So there is going to be a reduction in the monthly passes. So depending on where you park, all the rates are slightly different, but there will be at least a 20% reduction in the monthly permits. In addition, there is one permit, the hunting permit, that will be offered for $33 a month, which is even more of a discount from the 20%. So that $33 matches the cost of the MCTS parking pass that was available to employees in the past which is not available this year to employees. So we're offering that monthly parking permit for the same rate at $33 a month for the fall semester. And for those people that you're not going to be on campus every day, you don't want a monthly permit, you have the option to purchase a part-time pass, so a daily pass. You can purchase that through Parking and Transit website, or you can use the Park Mobile option, and you can either make a reservation ahead of time, or you can purchase it on the day of for however many hours you might need. In addition, you will be able to use your Panther ID card and add money to it for transportation purposes. And in some specific garages, you'll be able to swipe into the garage and have that money deducted for parking in that space. So there are plenty of options, more than I can cover right now. So please go to the Transportation Services website and see what might work best for you. So I will now hand it over to Tim Danielson, who will cover some human resources related topics about returning to the workplace. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. A few weeks ago, we issued a guidance document to supervisors and department chairs on how to start thinking about developing a plan for return to campus. That guidance document resides on the HR website in the Return to Campus section. We've since issued a template for you supervisors to go about putting that plan down and then submitting it through Streamline, the university's e-workflow tool. I've seen several work plans over the last 48 hours or so. Really appreciate everyone's attention to that. If you have questions about how to complete a department level work plan and you're a department chair or supervisor, just reach out to the HR business partner or prep who works with your school college division, and they will help you complete that submission. And to address a particular question that came in regarding a smaller team on campus and the need to have a physical space open, what I would ask you to do is please make direct contact with the dean or division head that you work with and talk through what's possible. Important if that small team contains several individuals who may be, say, immunocompromised or otherwise be at a higher risk should they contract the virus. Work through with that individual, the leader of your area, that dean or division head, what may be possible to see. Maybe it is possible not to have the space physically open, but it still can be accomplished. The effective delivery of services can happen via an alternative route. With there, I'll stop and turn it over to my colleague, Zach Stewart-Wald.
Good morning, everyone. The EOC's Building Preparedness and Operations Team, or BPO, is led by Lieutenant Brian Swatala and co-sub leads Rick Thomas, Director of the Union, and myself. Our focus is on the building safety aspects as we return to campus. We work with building administrators who are management from schools, colleges, or divisions that manage the majority of the buildings and may consist of building chairs to develop and finalize the overall building safety plans. Although some departments have submitted individual plans, we are asking that these plans are made part of the overall building plan, as there is a symbiotic relationship between the departments and the rest of the building. Once drafted, the building administrator sends the plan to the BPO team, where a review team reviews the plan, provides feedback, and also conducts a building tour for in-person feedback on the safety measures. Of course, while we're on site doing the tours, we're wearing our face masks as well as practicing good social distancing. Lastly, the building administrator updates the safety plan and returns it to the BPO team for final approval. The BPO team then sends that final back to the building administrator and other key entities that are part of the process. There are 4 building plans that are approved thus far and 11 others that are in the queue. This plan approval process and other guidance are available on the Fall 2020 Reopening Campus Planning webpage. Building safety plans will indicate when the buildings will be unlocked and locked, and will specify their building hours, as well as these should be posted on the doors. These details will be determined on a case-by-case basis and communicated to the buildings. Faculty and staff will be able to work in their spaces based on the capacities and safety aspects set for those spaces. For example, offices are allowed 200 square feet per person. For offices larger than 200 square feet, more than one person will be allowed in that space as long as social distancing can be maintained. Room modifications or staggered schedules may be required in order to work in an office where occupant numbers are higher than the capacity allowed. Capacities in offices, classrooms, and research areas are independent of each other when it comes to the overall building capacity. One question that was received was, will the atrium in the Union open and will student workers be able to come to work in the dining food court areas? The answer is yes. Some but not all of the food service areas in the Union will reopen, including some in the atrium. Retail services will be counting on students to help staff those operations. Any previous student staff wishing to work this semester should contact their supervisor. Through proper social distancing planning or capacities in classrooms, offices, and research areas, the majority of the capacity of a building is maintained. However, common spaces such as hallways, stairwells, and other locations where people congregate, such as outside classrooms or service desks, are impossible to control. Using signage on walls, floor markings, and education, human behaviors will be influenced to socially distance, but cannot be guaranteed. For this reason, overall building capacities are not being set. We are Panthers protecting Panthers. Help each other out to be safe. Now I'll pitch this back to Melissa.
Thanks, Zach and Tim. And to keep things moving along, I'm going to quickly transition it back to the Chancellor to address time for questions and answers. Thanks.
Terrific, Melissa and team. Thank you all for covering the facilities, transportation, return to on-site types of questions. Well, we've certainly hit hard all the questions that were addressed to us beforehand. I know we've got a number of new questions.
Chancellor, you're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was hoping I wouldn't do that, but now I take even a little more time. What I was saying is that thanks to Melissa, thanks for the team for covering those important details. I think we've covered almost every question that was asked ahead of time. And I know we've got new questions that have come in. So those will start filling in the chat side of our feature, and we'll start allocating those. We will spend about 5 extra minutes. So our plan right now is to end at about 10:35. And so with that, why don't we have the first question for Q&A, and Helene will put that in and we'll read that and guide that to the right person. Okay, it looks like we've got a question for James Fay from Anonymous. Since the buildings at UWM are public and open, how will information and mask supply be conveyed to those outside the UWM community that may be in our buildings?
Thank you, Chancellor. Yeah, this is a great question. It's kind of a multifaceted answer. So we're going to have signage posted outside of the building. University Relations has created a signage library that you can access and order from. So we have signage that says masks are required, and those will be posted outside of doors. And then as part of the building preparedness and operations, when building administrators are putting together their building safety plans, they'll be identifying areas where disposable procedure masks will be stored, and then that should be communicated to occupants of the building so that if someone does present without a mask, someone that sees them can, provide a gentle reminder that they should have a mask and then point them in the right direction where those are located.
Great, thank you, James. Appreciate that. Now let's move on to the next question. This is for Deb from Anonymous. Deb, knowing that there's uncertainty, will more hybrid options be available or international students given preference to allow for a mostly hybrid schedule to maintain immigration status for these students?
Thank you. The rules currently are that the continuing international students don't need to be in any face-to-face. Their schedule can be fully online. For the new students that are coming in, their CIE staff, are working with the advisors and the individual programs to which the students are admitted to make sure that they have hybrid options in their schedule.
Thank you, Dev. This is for Joan Prince and Chia Vang from Anonymous. The speaker mentioned that diversity training, I think the speaker is referred to as Vice Chancellor Prince. The speaker mentioned that diversity training will happen for chairs. Is there a way for campus to ensure that the training is then shared and passed on to the people in the departments?
Thank you for that question, Anonymous. Yes, just because of capacity's sake. Hi, thank you. I think I'm on now. Just because of capacity's sake, we have to start with the chairs, and our goal over the next academic year and moving forward is to offer that same type of training for anyone who is part of a search and screen committee. As you know, the Chancellor has mandated training also for each and every one of us on campus, faculty, staff, and that will occur for students as well. So as our capacity to be able to do a number of these trainings and offerings, professional development offerings, these will be open and available for everyone on campus. Just give us time and opportunity to get that up and running. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Prince. Joan, I completely agree with and support that perspective. The next question is for Vice Chancellor Van Harpen from Anonymous. Does the compensation freeze affect the previously scheduled across-the-board pay increases for January 2021?
Thanks, Chancellor Mone. The January 2021 pay increases is part of a statewide pay plan, and so that is not impacted by our campus decisions to freeze any compensation increases. That is still in place. We are monitoring to see whether the state takes any action to reverse that in light of overall state revenues, as they do contribute to that increase. So far, we've not heard anything on that in terms of any action taken, so it's still in place. If we do hear anything on that to change, we will notify the campus community of that as soon as we would hear.
Thank you, Robin. The next question is for Rick Thomas from Anonymous. In a prior town hall, it was stated that all large classrooms would be updated to have lecture capture capability. This does not appear to be the case for the room, Lapham 162. I have been assigned for a hybrid class. Why aren't rooms being updated to maximize the learning experience for our students? Rick?
Thank you, Chancellor. Classroom Technologies has let us know that about 1/3 of the 50 largest classrooms on general assignment classrooms on campus are currently equipped for lecture capture, and they have plans to have all 50 of these rooms fully equipped with cameras and mics prior to the start of the semester. Additionally, we have confirmed, since this question came in, that Lapham 162 has been set up for that capability.
Thank you, Rick. And all questions, I'm really appreciating how our answers have been succinct and tight. That's allowing us to really get through a lot of these. The next question is for Kelly Haig from Damon Stewart of Pathway Advising in Academic Affairs. Kelly, many students may have Wi-Fi troubles at home. Will there be designated areas on campus for students to engage in socially distanced, live, synchronous online lectures aside from the library?
So there is not a plan for designated space outside the library for this type of activity, but we know that students go where it works for them, and they assume that Wi-Fi will be there, which on our campus is everywhere. I do want to take a moment, though, to highlight the care that has been taken to make sure that students have access to technology during this time. We have had laptop rental ability that is managed by our Dean of Students office. And there are some details on our website about how students can access Wi-Fi. So the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin has posted a detailed list of internet service providers throughout the state to help support people's access to Wi-Fi. There has been a lot of work done to try to consider how we might be able to extend and have kind of maybe drive-through Wi-Fi. That's not a possibility for us at this point, but on our website, you'll be able to find quite a bit of details. But again, students, I think the library is working really diligently to make sure that students see that space as a place for them